Okay, people, quiet on set, camera rolling, and action!
Ooh! It's a new Crooked Dice release, a fantasy variant for their No, sorry, Joe, can we go again? That ooh just made me sound really weird.
Okay, just do what feels comfortable. Still rolling. Action!
What's it got, my precious? Oh, the evil menzies from Crooked Dice and little hobbitses from AGILE University Press, working together like orcs and goblins.
Cut.
Not listening.
James,
What?
what do you mean what? You can't do that for the whole unboxing.
But Joe, the game lets you emulate your fantasy favourites. And I'm emulating a fantasy favourite. I mean it...
No more Smeagol, go again. Rolling, and action.
It is a time of fantasy, of heroes and villains. It is a time of war. New from the studio that brought you 7 TV Pulp, Crooked Dice and AGILE University Press are back with 7 TV Fantasy. A box of delights packed with everything you need to game the fantasy worlds you know and love. There are enlightening guides, armies of cards, ancient grimoires, fire-charred counters, shiny gem things, more cards, fancy templates, the old classic, the D6, and yet more cards. Build a cast of characters to star in your own fantasy production. Direct on the tabletop.
You know what, James? I actually quite like that.
I'm losing my voice.
Just get on with it. I've still got to edit this mess. Still rolling, and action.
Okay, so if that silly intro didn't clue you in, 7TV have made a new game that puts all manner of fantasy possibilities into your grubby mitts and lets you direct them as if you're a film producer, creating a game that has stars, props, MacGuffins, extras and more. The end goal is to have fun gaming with an on-screen narrative, as well as developing a behind-the-camera meta-narrative at the same time. Those narratives explore all kinds of established fantasy worlds and tropes, as well as filmmaking conventions that will satisfy the nerdiest of cinephiles. There's homage to classic fantasy cinema, think things like Dino De Laurentiis and Ray Harryhausen, all that kind of goodness, but there's plenty of television shows, games and novels represented too. All of these are presented in 7TV's bold and appealing style, and their quirky approach is really a breath of fresh air. As you can see from the stuff that we're taking out of the box here, Crooked Dice's production makes for a game that instantly screams, just look at me, I'm pretty. And thanks to the quality of the visuals, you're just going to enjoy having a real good delve into this game. But there's more to it than that. The deeper that you delve, the more layers of sweet fantasy flavour and great gaming options you're going to discover, in the text as well as the game ideas. The box doesn't have figures in it. You can choose those from Crooked Dice's own growing range, or from any other fantasy figures you might have. What 7TV Fantasy does have is a massive number of cards to use in your gaming, 4 books, which are called guides, that have all the rules and campaign details, and loads of other gameplay aids too. An in-depth flip-through of the 4 guides that are included will be done in another video, but we'll peep at them here, particularly the Director's Guide. This acts as the starting point, introducing players to the cinematic skirmish gaming of 7TV Fantasy, as well as how the game is played. These rules are standalone, but for folks who've played previous 7TV releases, it's worth noting that they're also fully compatible with the existing 7TV 2nd edition rules. The Director's Guide goes through the core rules, initially explaining the Trilogy deck. These 45 cards determine how many turns remain, and the bigger your playing area, the longer of the 3 acts will go on for, and the more Trilogy deck cards will be used. All these cards, and indeed everything in 7TV Fantasy, relate to some kind of fantasy media or cinema concepts. The Act 1 card, which is called Saved by the Edit, is just a basic reroll, but with its name it's given some cinema production flavour. Another one, Side Quest, basically just allows a model to boost their movement, but because of its name, it has a video game sort of feel. The Finale card, which is called Wandering Monster, well, that's bringing more of a Dungeons & Dragons vibe, And then there's the Wilhelm Scream card. That scream. And while only cinema buffs might actually know that much used scream has a name, you've all probably heard it in many different movies, and especially in the so bad they're good fantasy films that 7TV seems to love. These details are what 7TV's about, solid mechanics alongside nerdy details from players' favourite genres and mediums. And the nerdier you are, the more good stuff you'll notice in 7TV fantasy. The team at Wargames Illustrated are pretty nerdy, and we found lots to enjoy here. Plot points are recorded with little shiny gem counters, and 20 of these are included. These are accumulated each turn by the players, then spent to perform actions. Actions sometimes require the rolling of dice, and 9d6s come with the game, in black and clear purple. What is it that impacts the required roll on these d6s? Well, that's where we get to the huge stack of 230 profile cards. These list all the statistics, special effects, and other options available to a wide bestiary of creatures, and a massive call sheet of stars and extras. The layout of these cards is really clear and consistent, showing the universal fight, shoot, defense, mind, body, and spirit stats that apply to every single model, no matter if they're stars, co-stars, or extras. There are heroic, villainous, and neutral choices, and the cards we're going to take a more focused look at here are just a tiny selection of the full deck. Leading the way, we've got Monster Hunter and Tragic Hero, and these match models from the Crooked Dice Fantasy Stars set, which we reviewed quite recently. These heroic stars have star quality abilities that are activated with plot points, and these are extra actions. There are also special effects, character abilities that happen depending on the circumstances, and then there's different attack types listed. Some models will have more of these than others, and to round things out, there's ratings, which are kind of the points cost of the model, health, and also genre symbols, which will help you to match things up for specific productions. That's a whole lot of detail shown very effectively on just one side of a card. The specifics of the star quality and special effects abilities are listed on the flip side of these cards. From just these two examples, it's clear to see that the stars play very differently. Monster Hunter's star quality ability, which is called Hunting Ground, allows him to halt the advance of an enemy who gets close to a friendly model. Tragic Hero, on the other hand, has got Melancholy Moment, which essentially freezes him out of the game until he's next on screen, and that means he can't be attacked or targeted. Special effects vary a lot too. Tragic Hero can take wounds instead of friendly models, and then recover them by taking out enemies, but he can also nullify the abilities of enemies. Monster Hunter is a far more proactive fighter, and he's got magical hand sigils, a killing blow action, and increased movement if he's acting alone. That all makes for interesting gameplay, but if you happen to know the characters who are actually represented here, and we suspect they're the witches Geralt and Elric from the works of Michael Moorcock, then you'll know that they're actually a really good representation of those characters through just a small space and a few abilities. To support your stars, there are co-stars and extras, often illustrated with crooked dice figures, but there's also varied artwork and even the odd appearance of some old GW figures. Dogs of War can be seen here. Crikey! Co-stars still have the star quality, but it's often at a lower cost and perhaps a slightly lower effectiveness too, while extras, they do more of the grunt work on the tabletop. Through these options you can build a varied cast of characters that fits all manner of fantasy tropes. And where there's good, there must be the opposing baddies, and that's where we come to the villainous stars, their co-stars and their extras. Even extras have individual character, from the Big Bad Wolf's ability to set up anywhere on the playing area, the Wight who's able to raise dead once an enemy's removed and that'll come back as a zombie, and the Serpent Man can actually use the magical tomes to cast spells. Neutral extras come in a wide range of styles and sizes, from giant rodents to just plain giants. And you can see a taster of the fantasy scope from the cards we're showing here. Different strikes and abilities bring about varied statuses, which are represented with tokens. These tokens come on an MDF punch sheet, and they'll give your game the faint smell of burning heretics, which is a nice touch. The addition of colour makes sure they look pretty snazzy, and the same MDF is used for various templates, again used during different combats and also in spell resolutions. And on the subject of spells, there are magic grimoires which represent different branches of casting, and each has its own feel and theme. These, along with everything else in the box, feel a little bit like little artifacts from the worlds of 7TV fantasy, and it's another layer of character the game has that we really like. Rounding out the non-book remains, there are artifact and MacGuffin cards. The former bring in some game advantages, and they're generally used to do some sort of extra devastating attack, whereas the MacGuffins are an optional extra that act as pivotal objective elements. And they lead us to the second book, which is a 32-page producer's guide. This is essentially a campaign system that expands the meta-narrative of the invented film studio and producer. And the highlight here really are some of the classic features that are shown in the book. They riff on fantasy classics, and clearly the writers have had a lot of fun. The third book is the 44-page casting guide, and that's not spell casting, but creating the cast to use in your games / productions. It offers expanded detail about the folks on those profile cards, and there's a ton of cool background to enhance your gaming and narrative. Happily, you can even create your own stars and co-stars with the little extra chapter at the back. Then there's the encounter guide. This is a smaller softback book, it's just shy of A5 size, and it's got 36 pages that bulk out and expand upon previous special rules from the producer's guide. There are loads of tables to modify events, and these will create countless variables for your gaming. Oh, and finally, there's a tiny little quick reference sheet to make your gaming life easier. A broad world, or rather worlds, of fantasy fun are packed into this box. Everything's clearly been created, written, game designed and graphic designed with such love for the source material that it's really inspiring to us. We can only compliment the team behind the game, the folks at Crooked Dice and at AGILE University, who have come together before raiding the Wargames Illustrated cabinets for fantasy figures and getting busy working out what sort of production we want to create.
This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.